Welcome to Badass Jews, everybody. A podcast about what?
Badass Jews.
That's right. Now, most people would think that's an oxymoron, but we're going to prove them wrong.
Yes, absolutely. There are so many Jews that people don't know about that have been brave, that have fought in wars, that have fought off Nazis, Ku Klux Klan, you name it, we've been there fighting it, and it's time that these stories are told.
Yeah, Jews have been fighting stuff for ages. This goes back all the way to 2 weeks ago at Columbia University.
Yes.
It's been happening since the inception of Jews.
Yeah.
They've had to be badass.
Without a doubt, from the time that David slew Goliath, little guy versus big guy.
Goliath, not Jewish.
Not Jewish.
David, Jewish.
David Jewish.
Last name, Birnbaum. What was his name? Does anyone know David's last name?
I think he was just David.
Oh, those were the days when you could
Right?
just have one name, like
Right?
Lizzo. It's amazing how we got together because I'm a stand-up comedian. You would call yourself a...
Yeah, amateur historian, I guess.
Yeah.
Super Jew, super nerd, whatever you call it. Really deep in the study of Jews you've never heard of before.
And you started a show called Badass Jews, and then I was approached by a production company. They wanted to do a show called Badass Jews, so we started to do the show, and then they said, there's another Badass Jews. We got to reach out to this guy that does Badass Jews. So we reached out, we talked, we collabed a little bit, and me and this company had done a few other episodes. They're out there in where? Internet land, that you could find them somewhere, but now we're starting anew. We think now is the time that we need Badass Jews, the podcast, to be here.
Yeah, with everything going on out there, with the protests, with what's going on in Israel, it's more important than ever that Jews are able to connect with that side of themselves.
Yeah.
With the tough guy. We were out there. There are stories of protests during World War II, of Nazis being here, and of Jews going out and fighting against the Nazis. And we need to not be afraid to be out, be a voice for the people.
Yeah, and I pride myself on kind of being a loud, obtrusive Jew, like really kind of in your face, and I think sometimes to my detriment, but sometimes to my benefit as well. And it's amazing because I was raised Reform, which is Jewish at best, and the connection that you feel isn't even on a religious level necessarily, but there's a cultural level, there's an identity that's involved in Judaism, and you start to feel it in times of turmoil, like right now, and the stuff that's happening in the world. All the Jews I know are going through anxiety, and not just traditional Jewish anxiety, but there's a real weight happening right now, so I think that our voices are more important than ever.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. There's a shirt that I love, and on it says, "I'm here to make my ancestors proud." And I think that's something that weighs on us pretty regularly as Jews.
Yeah, and I'm going to say this. You have a very gruff voice, and I dig it, man. It's so gruff.
You got the same thing. I was thinking maybe one of us, our voices need to be edited to sound more
No,
like...
I think my voice is more nasally. I'm like, I'm Jewish. But we're gonna kick it off.
Yeah.
We are sponsored by Bajío Sunglasses. They're great company. They make fishing sunglasses. I met the guy. I go, those are great glasses, and he gave me a pair. And I said, I'm going to mention these glasses wherever I can. So we're going to have a promo code when we come back for the next episode or whenever we organize that. They're great sunglasses.
They are
Look at these. Look at
beautiful.
these. And they're polarized. So when I'm fishing, I'm like, oh look, I see. Oh man, I look so cool in these sunglasses.
Yeah.
You remember Vin Diesel in Knockaround Guys? And he's got this same tat that I have right here, and he just walks up to this guy and he goes, 500. You remember that?
No, I've never seen it.
He goes, you can watch the clip on YouTube.
watch it.
Just Google Vin Diesel 500. And he goes, 500. And the guy goes, what? And he goes, 500 street fights. That's what I figured it'd be to get. And he goes in this big, long monologue, and the guy's just looking at him. And then he takes his jacket off. The guy goes, I ain't got no problem with you, man. And he's all jacked. And then he goes through 500 fights. You want to know? I've learned nothing more important than this. He goes, bang, and just headbutts him. And then the fight starts. And you're like, always take the first shot.
Always
It's
take
very
the first
important.
shot. I like that.
Tell me about the badass Jew we got today.
Yeah, I was thinking while you're telling me that story, you got those sunglasses on, they're polarized. having polarized sunglasses would also help if you were out fighting Nazis, because the glare from their patches and emblems wouldn't blind you as you're trying to punch them, which is something that this guy, the Mighty Atom, did on a regular basis.
Nazis loved flair.
They loved flair.
Yeah, they're big on flair, like a TGI Fridays
That's right.
waiter.
That's right. So Joesph Greenstein, this guy is one of my heroes because he fought the trifecta of, I would say, like the Ashkenazi axis of evil. He fought the KKK, he fought Cossaks, and he fought Nazis.
When was this?
So he was born, Joesph Greenstein was born July 15th, 1893. And he's born in like the shtetl of all shtetls. It's like as shtetl-y as you can be.
Tell people that don't know what a shtetl is, what a shtetl is.
In Eastern Europe, Jews were forced to live in these small towns that were incredibly poor. There wasn't really a lot of industry there. There wasn't a lot of trade outside of it, fueled almost entirely by anti-Semitism. They were isolated and forced to live in these small towns. So they were incredibly poor and isolated.
Okay.
So Joesph Greenstein is born in this tiny town, and he's born 2 months early, right? So he comes out of the womb weighing 3.5 pounds.
Tiny baby.
Tiny baby. And this is 1893. So you're not going to survive that, right? Well, Joesph Greenstein does, right? His mother takes him and she puts him in a shoebox lined with cotton, right? She uses an eyedropper to feed him.
Wow.
In the small town of Suvlak, this is big news, right? So doctors are coming and they're showing up and they're saying, this kid's not going to live, but when he dies, I'll buy his body.
Why?
Why? I mean, the science.
Oh,
The
okay.
science, obviously, right? So he lives for a week, he lives for a month, he ends up surviving. Father dies at the age of 5 in this small town, this poor town. The Greensteins are the poorest family, right?
Wow.
So it's, like the old joke, we were so poor. This was them. They didn't have shoes to wear on their feet. They didn't have clothes to wear. They were wrapping rags around, walking around in the snow. And Joe was sick to begin with.
Yeah.
He was a sick kid, born prematurely. So he's living, he's thriving. He's thriving, he's not quite thriving, right? At the age of 14, he goes to the doctor's office and he has his checkup. His mother leaves the room to talk to the doctor, and he hears the doctor say to his mom, he's not going to live to be 18. You're lucky if he lives another year, right? So he hears this because he's sick. And
What's he got?
They live in
Rheumatoid arthritis?
So he's got asthma.
That's a Jewish thing.
Yes.
Asthma's very Jewish.
So
What else?
I think it's just the asthma. He
Oh,
could
just the asthma?
Look, it's
My brother's got asthma. We got him a puffer. I guess they didn't have puffers back in the 1890s.
They didn't have puffers back in 1893.
Asthma would be tough in the 18...
right?
all the time.
And he's running from anti-Semites all the time. Also,
There was
so-
anti-Semites
you got Cossaks.
chasing after this asthma guy?
Of course. Easy
Not
target.
easy. Okay.
Easy target. So he's on his way back home from the doctor, and they pass this carnival, right? In this carnival, he sees this sign for the Mighty Vilenko. Mighty Vilenko is this larger-than-life strongman.
Yeah.
Right? He's on all these posters, big beard, like a real man.
Yeah.
And he tries to go into the tent. Doesn't have any money, obviously, but wants to go in the tent to see him, right? So he tries to sneak underneath the tent flap to get in and gets caught by one of the carnies.
Okay.
Right? This guy drags him aside and starts beating him.
Yeah, carnies are not known to be good people.
Are not known
No,
to be
and
good
to
people.
quote Mike Myers, they smell like cabbage. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this guy would fit that bill exactly.
Okay.
Right?
Starts beating on him.
Starts beating on
for
him.
trying to sneak in.
For trying to sneak in. Again, he's a sickly kid. He's not tough. He's not fighting back.
Right.
Beats him to within an inch of his life. And all the time he's yelling, "Dirty little Jew, I'll kill you. Dirty little Jew, I'll kill you.
Yeah.
Dirty little Jew, I'll kill you."
How do you know he was a Jew? The asthma?
I think he just,
He
maybe
just
he just
guessed.
made an assumption.
All right.
I guess, went on the stereotype and decided that this guy's Jewish.
Okay.
Right? So he had a big Star of David tattoo on his arm.
I don't think that they were popular back then.
So, anyways, he's barely conscious, drags himself into this trailer, right? He's hiding under a table and sees these big Cossack boots walk in, right? He's hiding under the table, the Cossack boots walk in. All of a sudden, he looks up and he sees none other than the champion Valenko, right? He was hoping to see him on stage. He's now face to face with him. He's terrified. He thinks Valenko is going to continue to beat him.
Yeah.
Valenko looks at him and says, "Who did this to you?" Right? So he says nothing. He's still terrified. He keeps his mouth shut.
He didn't
says
snitch
nothing,
on
right?
his Carney. Yeah.
Valenko says, "Stay here. I'll be right back." Valenko leaves. 10 minutes later, he's outside yelling, "Hey, boy, come out here!" Right? So Joe comes out, and there's this line of a dozen carnies, right? Valenko says to him, Who did this to you? Right? Joe can't even say who it is because he was shielding his face when he was getting beat. He can't talk.
Yeah.
So Valenko says to him, "Well, you heard who did this, right?" He says, "Yeah, I guess so. I guess I would recognize his voice." So he goes down the line. Valenko goes down the line. First carny, he points at him and says, "Say it." And he says, "Dirty little Jew, I'll kill you." Goes to the next one, says, "Say it. Dirty little Jew, I'll kill you." Next one, "Dirty little Jew, I kill you." Goes all the way down the line till he gets to the last one. The guy says, "Dirty little Jew, I'll kill you." And Joesph flinches. He can't even speak, but he flinches. And in that moment, Valenko knows he's the guy.
Right.
Valenko grabs him by the lapel and punches him in the face as hard as he can.
Yeah.
Right? The guy goes flying. All that's left in Valenko's hand is the guy's lapel.
Nice.
Right? Guy's unconscious on the ground. Valenko walks him back to his cabin. They talk a little bit. He starts to learn Joseph's story. He learns that Joesph is this sick kid, that he has this history. And Valenko says to him, "Listen, Joe, I was once like you. I was sick. I didn't think I would make it, but I learned to be strong. If you want to come with me, you can tour with us, and I'll teach you. I'll teach you how to be strong. You will survive."
This is like a really early Make-A-Wish.
It's totally an early Make-A-Wish.
Yeah.
It's totally an early
How
Make-A-Wish.
old was he at this point?
So he was almost 14 years old.
This is the story. Run away with the carnival.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And, Valenko was trying to do things right. He said, "Go ask your mom if you can come."
Yeah, you need permission.
So
Yeah, this isn't Michael Jackson's ranch.
it is not
Yeah.
Michael Jackson's ranch.
So he goes and tells his mom.
He does not.
Oh!
He does not. He goes to the town, hides out for an hour, comes back, and
My
says,
mom said it's okay.
"We're good to go."
Such a good Jewish lie.
Right?
I
Right?
love that.
And not only that, he's worried. He doesn't want his mom to worry, so he never writes her while he's gone.
Oh, wow.
So he leaves with
You'd picture a Jewish mother. You're 14. You go away to summer camp forever. Never write home. Your mom would lose it.
you don't understand.
She'd show up at the camp in Halliburton, Ontario, which is where I went. You don't call your mother? What are you doing? I've been sending you chocolate bars every 3 weeks.
I imagine if she could find him, that's what she would
Wow,
have done.
running away from home.
Yeah. And I mean, this was an adventure for him.
Yeah.
The carnival left, it went east. They were going through India, they went through Eastern Europe. And this whole time, Valenko is training him. And, he's training him on breathing techniques. That's really where it started for him.
Yeah.
Valenko said that, sorry, I'm missing the.
That's okay.
I lost my quote. I had a beautiful quote there, but anyways,
Breathing technique is one of the most important things in fighting. Like I do Krav Maga now, and it's all not focused on breathing, but it's like you're going to lose a fight if you can't breathe.
Side note: where are you training Krav Maga?
I can't say it on the air, but in Jersey.
Okay,
Yeah.
in Jersey. Okay,
Yeah, in
okay,
Jersey.
awesome. I did Krav Maga for many years.
Krav rules.
Yeah, I love
yeah.
it.
I'm
I
just
love it.
walking around punching people now. I'm kidding. That'd be no. it's
Right?
wrong.
And actually, we're going to talk about another week. We're going to talk about Emmy Lichtenfeld, who created Krav Maga.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's not Israeli. It's diaspora. It was created in Slovakia.
I've been lying to everybody.
Yeah, I
telling them
know
it's
that's
Israeli.
That's okay.
All right.
That's okay. We'll set that straight. But still, gives me a lot of pride to say it's Israeli, but it is actually.
So he's
it's actually
learning
diaspora.
breathing
Yeah.
techniques.
So he's learning breathing techniques. He starts with lifting empty buckets. So Valenko says, you're going to go outside, you're going to lift these empty buckets. He starts lifting empty buckets. He's lifting empty buckets. They're putting some sand in them. He's breathing. He's staying outside in the cold. Here it is. He says, breathing is life. Without air, the fire dies. And that comes from Valenko.
Okay.
So he's teaching him about wrestling as well. He's starting his self-defense training because Valenko is also a champion wrestler. Part of his duties, part of what he's doing is helping Valenko keep his place clean. He's like Valenko's assistant.
Yeah.
He's cleaning up one day and he finds a Siddur, right? A Siddur is a Jewish book of prayer.
Yeah.
Right? And right behind him is Valenko, right? And Valenko says to him, that was my grandfather's. It was my father's before him, and now it's mine, right? He says that by the time I was your age, I survived 3 pogroms. Mm-hmm. And this is all in Yiddish. He's speaking in Yiddish to him, which blows Joseph's mind. He had no idea Valenko was Jewish to this point. He says to him, we live in a strange world. While many accept our lives, receive our talents, and give our children their names, they get upset by our presence. By the time I was your age, I had survived 3 pogroms, so I ran away to be free.
Tell people that don't know what a pogrom is.
So a pogrom was essentially a violent riot against Jews.
Happened
in
all
Eastern
over
Europe.
Europe.
Yeah. So if you were a Jew living in Europe, you were going to face pogroms.
Yeah.
They happened outside of Europe as well. They happened in certain communities in the Middle East as well. But the big ones were in Europe. He says to him, it's hard to be a Jew, it's hard to be a man, but try and never forget who you are. And that stayed with Joesph his entire life. The importance of his Jewish identity and the importance of who he would continue with him throughout his entire life. They would continue to travel for about a year and a half. Ultimately, Valenko would make Joesph sleep outside. He would sleep in the snow. He became this really robust individual.
I mean, that's not very polite.
Right?
Yeah, it's like your mentor's making you sleep in the snow. I mean, I'd kind of be like, hey, can I not come inside?
Right? Joesph says, do you want me to die?
Yeah.
Do you want me to die out here? And Valenko says, you won't die. Don't worry about it. You'll be fine.
Valenko's like
Right?
tough love type of thing.
Totally tough love.
Yeah.
So they're touring for a year and a half. They get back to Suvalk.
And the tour's not glamorous.
It is not glamorous.
You're not on a Bert Kreischer bus going across America.
No.
This is a tour you're probably riding on one of those horse-drawn carriages from town to town. People yelling at you, hey, carnies, you stink.
Yes.
And then you get there, you got to entertain. There was no rides back then.
I don't think they were particularly popular.
No, you just show up. It was a freak show, a traveling freak show.
Totally. They had like dancing dogs and stuff like that.
It's like a Lizzo concert. All right.
I've never been to a Lizzo concert.
Nor have I.
Okay.
Just picture it like that.
I imagine. Okay. I imagine that's what a Lizzo concert would look like. Right? So they're traveling for 18 months. They get back to Suvalk and Valenko just sort of says, okay, we're back home. See ya. There's nothing else I can teach you. Go.
Yeah.
And he's done. They leave. Joesph watches them go away, and he's back home. He's walking back through his town, and he's seeing all these people that he recognizes, but they don't quite recognize him because when he left, he was like a sickly kid. He was coughing everywhere, unpleasant to be around, and now he's like this robust young man who was like a serious athlete.
Yeah.
Right? So he gets back home, he knocks on the door, his mom answers the door, and she passes out. She just immediately faints.
She thought he was dead.
She thought he was dead.
Yeah.
She thought that he had died in a lake, that she had drowned. She sat Shiva, which is 10 days of mourning after someone dies. They had like a little plot for him where he would have been buried, He thought he was dead. Anyway, she's ecstatic. Everybody's ecstatic. Goes back to normal life in Suvalk for a time. Around the time he gets back, he also runs into a childhood crush, Leia, who he very quickly marries, an incredibly patient woman who he would be with for basically the rest of his life. Suvalk is really a difficult place to be. There's really no future for him as a Jew. He goes to work in a tannery where they tan stuff.
Yeah,
right?
tannery is like for leather and
Okay.
stuff like that, as opposed to a tanning salon, which is, they weren't around back then. And Jews are not big fans of it, except Bob Evans had a great tan. Robert Evans was the head of Paramount Studios.
Okay.
Made Love Story and The Godfather.
He
Very tan Jew.
yes.
Very
yes,
tan.
yes.
But a tannery.
Yes, so he's working at a tannery, and he's sitting at a table one day at lunch, and he hears someone behind him, and they say to him, "I'll do my part when the time comes. We'll sweep the kikes out of the room with an iron broom."
For those of you that don't know, kike is a slur for Jews.
Yeah, it's not a nice word to hear at a lunch table.
No.
So, he doesn't know this guy. This guy's probably never met a Jew before in his life, but he still hates us.
Yeah.
Right? So he's already thinking, this is not the place for me. Right? So a month later, he's outside. He's working on his father-in-law's house. He's up on a ladder, and he hears a commotion coming from behind him. Turns around to see this drunk Cossack coming out of a bar, people yelling, "He just killed someone, he just killed someone," right?
Yeah.
So Joesph sees him run into the woods. He runs down off his ladder, jumps behind the house, and cuts the guy off in the woods, right? The Cossack is drunk, throws up a little bit, and then Joesph says, "You're mine. I'm going to get you," right? The Cossack goes to swing his sword at him. Joesph blocks it, right? Because he's been training with Valenko for years, right? Blocks it, kicks it in half, right? The guy drops it. He's got, now on the floor, there's the hilt of the sword and the blade itself. The Cossack goes for the blade itself. Joesph goes for the hilt, and he takes it and he smashes the Cossack in the head with it, right? Cossack stands there, blinks twice, straight up like out of a movie. Blinks twice, falls over. He's dead. Dead. Joseph's now a wanted man in Suvalk. So, hides out for a couple days. Things cool down a little bit, but he knows it's time to leave. So, he makes a great escape. He goes out through the port of Bremen and ends up in America.
With his wife?
Not yet.
Okay.
This was a thing that you did back in the day. I don't think it's
You
something
just
really do
leave.
now. You leave, and then they come later.
Yeah, you can't
Right?
leave. You can't just leave now.
No.
No.
Right?
Man, yeah. Hey, honey, I moved to Miami.
Right?
Come down in 2 years.
That's essentially what
And
it is.
also back then, they wouldn't know necessarily who murdered him right away because they didn't have that type of forensic equipment.
They definitely did.
And there was no, they're not putting an APB out for him.
No,
So you kill a guy, then you're like, I better run down the block.
Yeah, and they were probably just going to blame the Jews anyways.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't really matter who killed him. It
They
was
love to do that.
definitely a Jew.
Yeah, they love to do
So,
that. All right.
So, it was in hot water. It was time to go.
Yeah.
So he ends up in Texas, which I didn't know before really digging into this that they were even...
Or Texas.
Yeah.
In America.
In America.
Takes a boat over.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. He ends up in Galveston, Texas.
Nice place.
Right?
Nice
I've
place.
never been.
Me neither, but I've heard. Yeah.
They have Lizzo shows there.
I don't think they have Lizzo shows, but I think that's traditional Texas. I mean, I'm
Okay.
sure back then everything was Texas. Very red state back then. But
It was very
Very
even
red
back
state.
then, very red state.
Not a fan of the Jews probably in Texas back then.
I think, yeah, probably not.
Okay.
Probably not. And we'll get there.
With some exceptions.
With some exceptions. So he ends up in Galveston, Texas, tries all kinds of different jobs. He gets a gig as a professional wrestler. He's doing some wrestling work. It's like a real job at that point.
Yeah.
There was like catch as can was like the type of sport that it was, and you could get paid, real matches. They lasted for hours, tons of endurance that these guys were doing.
Okay.
As a professional wrestler, went under the moniker Kid Greenstein, and made an okay living of it. It was a job, not a career.
Right.
Does that for a significant amount of, for a little bit of time. ends up becoming a stevedore, right? He's working on the docks. He ends up on a ship that's going to Japan. When he gets to Japan, he has learned about judo in his travels previously. So he shows up at a dojo and says, I want to learn judo. So they set up a bunk for him, and he spends 2 months totally immersed in judo, living in the dojo, helping out I'm not sure what a dojo
just a master?
Yeah, master dojo guy. Working with him, and spends 2 months learning judo. Goes back to Galveston, and Leia finally makes it. They're happy there for a while. Not a lot of money to be made. All this is going on. He ends up owning a filling station called Your Filling Station. And this is where trouble starts to find him again. So here he starts to encounter the KKK.
Okay.
So in 1926, he is naturalized as a U.S. citizen, right? And this gives him tremendous pride in being an American. And the KKK was very large at this point. I think there's estimates of, about maybe 4 million members at this point.
In America.
I believe it was 4 million. It may have been 400,000. Either way, a lot. There's a lot
Big
of
difference
KKK guys.
between 400,000.
A lot of KKK guys.
All right.
Right?
Let's research that.
Yes. We'll
Let's put it up right here. That's the real number.
Yes.
See it?
Yes.
It's 4 something. I don't know how many zeros. What year? What year was this?
This was 1926.
Yeah, we can Google this.
Check the numbers.
How many KKK members were in the United States of America in 1926?
What's the over/under on this? What are you doing?
I'm gonna go with 400,000.
Okay.
Pete's Google's gonna say no such thing as the KKK exists. This is fake news. They got to it. Soros got to it.
Oh, shit.
What?
I skipped the best part.
All right. Let's get this KKK number.
We're getting the KKK number, and then we're going to just jump back a tiny bit.
Okay.
I skipped.
200,000 in 1920.
There we go.
Okay.
400,000.
Oh, here we go. 8 million by the mid-1920s.
2.5, 4 million.
See?
A lot of Klan members.
A lot of Klan members.
White robes were on fire. Wow. Okay. There we go.
Members, right?
There was. All right. Wow.
We'll get back to the Klan. But
Okay.
first, I got to tell you this story about him in Galveston, because this is one of these amazing feats that just make him stand out as a person, right? So there was this young man in town that was obsessed with his wife, with Leia, right? He would follow her around. He would tell Joesph that I'm going to steal her from you.
Oh, boy.
Right? So one day, Joesph walks into the drugstore, right? And he hears, "Hey, Joe." He turns around, and there's this kid, Sam, who's obsessed with Joseph's wife, with a .38 revolver. Right?
Yeah.
Shoots him in the forehead, right? Joesph gets shot right in between the eyes. The bullet literally stops on his forehead. It breaks the skin and stops at Joseph's skull, flattened to the size of a nickel, right? It knocks him over. He gets up. He goes to the pharmacist and says, "Can I have a Band-Aid?"
Come on.
I'm telling you, there's newspaper articles about it. There are newspaper articles that document it.
All right.
Right?
Gets the Band-Aid.
So gets the Band-Aid, goes to the hospital. He's there for an hour. Nothing's wrong with him. They let him go.
Shot right in between the eyes.
Yes, there we go.
Bullet
We got
flattened
it
out
right up
against his
there.
forehead.
Yeah.
Except for shock and slight loss of blood, Joesph Greenstein was injured.
Right? The pharmacist said, "Are you even alive?" And he said, "I'm talking to you."
Says
schmuck,
shot
aren't I?"
accidentally by a friend.
So this is the thing. This is the thing. Joe was a close friend with this kid's father.
Yeah.
Right? And his father went to him and said, "Listen, Joe, my son is a good kid. He's a little bit troubled. I'm going to move him away and get him some help." And Joesph says, "Okay, I'll vouch for him as long as you promise to do the right thing by him." So Joesph tells the press, and when they go to court, says it was an accident. He didn't mean to do it.
Boy, Greenstein doesn't snitch, huh?
And he was a mensch. He was just like a good dude.
Yeah.
At their filling station, it became known for hobos. I don't know if is hobo an okay word now?
Sure,
hobos.
hobo,
So
yeah.
for hobos coming on trains, they knew that they could stop there and get a
Wandering
hot meal.
train riders.
Yes.
People. Wandering
Yes.
train people.
Wandering train people.
Hobos. Yeah. Hobo had such a ring to it.
Yeah, right. They knew they could stop there and get a hot meal. They could sleep on his floor. It was just like an unbelievable mensch, right? And that's why it's so sad when the KKK, one of those 4 million KKK members, get involved, right? So Joe is a naturalized citizen now. He hates what the KKK is doing because the KKK is trying to define who is a real American and who is not a real American.
Okay.
And Joe says, you're not the gatekeeper of that, right? You don't get to make that decision. And he's very outspoken about how terrible the KKK are.
Yeah.
He talks about it around town, whoever will listen, right? So it starts off, the KKK start going after him. It starts with a little graffiti on the door that says, we're watching you. And then the next stage, they come back, and he doesn't stop talking about him. They come back. He's outside working on a car, and he sees a car drive by, and they chuck a brick at his window. So he jumps up and runs after the car, jumps on the sidebar, and is like trying to pull the door open. They hit him in the head with a lead pipe, and he falls off, but catches the
License plate.
Yeah, catches license plate number. As it turns out, it's his neighbor from across the street. Good times, right? Then he, obviously he's knocked out. He keeps making a big deal. He keeps making a stink about the KKK, as he should. And the next time they see him, they hit him with a blackjack, knock him out, and kidnap him. He loses consciousness. He wakes up, and he's staring at a burning cross. Right. He's in the middle of a KKK rally.
KKK love the burning cross. That's their
With
thing.
the burning cross.
Yeah,
right?
that's their thing. That's their mascot.
Okay.
A burning cross. Crossy, they call him. Yeah.
Crossy. Yeah. What do you think his voice is like? How do you think he sounds?
It's so warm here. All right, 7th inning stretch, everybody. This game is lit.
That's how I would imagine it
Crossy.
also.
Yeah.
So, he comes to, he's staring at this burning cross and immediately starts getting beat. They tar and feather him. He wakes up the next day in this field. He's covered in, his skin is like red and burnt. Makes it back home. Leia, of course, always by his side, nurses him back to health. What does he do? He keeps talking shit on the KKK, which you would expect him to do. So a week later, he's in a bookstore that's right by his house. He's in there purchasing, I don't know what, but the guy working behind the cash register.
If the KKK ran it, they'd call it Burns and Noble. All right. Sorry.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Did you just come up with
Just
that?
came up with it. I didn't write it early.
I liked it.
He's at the bookstore.
He's at the bookstore. The guy working the cash register says to him, there's 2 guys outside waiting for you, right? He peeks out the window. There are these 2 huge guys he knows to be KKK members. So he sneaks out the back, right? But instead of just hiding, he goes in the back door of his house, pulls out a butcher's knife, runs back to the bookstore. And as he's running up to these 2 KKK thugs, he yells, "Hey, rednecks, you looking for me?" They turn around and see him. And he's looking crazy at this point. He's got long hair. He's a madman.
Yeah.
Right? He goes after them with the butcher's knife. They both run away. They never bother him again.
Okay.
And that was his last encounter with the KKK. So, amazing that he was able to stand up to them. Amazing that he wasn't destroyed, that he didn't die. So, this is around the time that Joesph really starts to hone in on his abilities. And I say abilities because it sounds like he's a Superman, but the stuff he did really, really sort of was.
Yeah, there's a persistence and a craziness that he's got. Those are abilities.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? So the interesting thing is, through what he learned with the mighty Valenko about breath and with his encounter of getting shot in the head, he started to research and really dig into what's known as hysterical strength. And that's there are these stories of people being able to lift unbelievably heavy objects when someone they love
Yeah.
or someone they know is in danger. So a car's falling on
Right.
somebody and they can lift them up.
Yeah.
Joesph said to himself, like, why can people only do this when they're in this hysterical state? Right? Why does it need to be this emergency in order to make this happen? And he really dug into his Judaism and in Kabbalah and found, I don't know if you would say a key, but maybe a path to harnessing like inhuman strength.
Be hysterical.
Be hysterical.
Yeah.
But calm. Right? I mean, you never saw Joe. Joe never lost his cool.
Right.
On stage, anyways.
Yeah.
He always like kept it together, but he was able to harness this strength in amazing ways. So there's like a particular quote that he found strength in and that he likened his strength to. And it says, "For everything was filled with that simple, boundless light, and no such part as head and no such part as tail. That is where there is neither the beginning or the end. For everything was simple and smooth, balanced evenly and equally in one likeness or affinity. And that is called the endless light." And that's where Joesph found his power. I don't understand any of that, but he understood it. And he used what he called the endless light to do these amazing feats. So what were these feats? Right? So one of the feats that he found, his goal was to increase his wrestling game. Right?
Okay.
And in order to increase his wrestling game, he wanted to be able to beat the chokehold.
Right.
Right. So you do Krav Maga,
Yeah.
that once you're in a chokehold, you have basically no time if it's a blood choke before you're out.
Right.
Right. If somebody's got their arm properly positioned around your neck,
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing you can do. You're done. Right. But Joesph didn't believe that. He thought that the tendons in his neck he could strengthen.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So he started doing these exercises. Right. Exactly. Like Kegels for your mouth. Right.
That works. That works. I don't feel it. I don't feel it.
So
It works.
that's keep up with that. But he also
That's enough for today.
right.
Yeah.
So he also would he would go into the kitchen and take the kitchen table in his mouth.
Oh, yeah.
Right on the corner in his mouth.
Who hasn't done that?
And lift it up.
Yeah.
And hold it. So he's holding it in his mouth with his neck. The entire table is parallel
Oh, boy.
to his mouth,
Yeah.
right? So one day he's doing that, and Leia walks in.
Yeah.
She's like,
You're cheating on me with the table?
"What the hell are you doing,
Yeah.
Joe?" And he puts it down, and right?
Yeah. Oh, nothing. No, nothing. No one was here. Caresses the
Right,
table
right?
as he walks away.
Yeah, so he puts it down, and she says, "You're getting teeth marks in my table.
Yeah.
What are you doing?"
Yeah.
Right? So he takes a sheet of metal and hammers the metal around the corner of the table so
Yeah.
that he can do his.
Oh, you can't mess up your wife's dining room table. My
Exactly.
wife get real upset. Yeah.
Right? So he starts doing it, and he realizes that he's bitten straight through that piece of steel.
Yeah.
Right? And he says, "Holy shit, I can do this with my teeth? This is unbelievable." He starts biting through nails. He starts biting through bars.
This works its way into the show,
This
clearly.
works its way into the show later on.
Yeah.
So one of his feats of strength is being able to just bite nails in
Yeah.
half. Unbelievable, right? Another feat of strength is his hair, right? He has this theory that you can strengthen. You could have used this. That you can strengthen. That you can strengthen your hair.
Yeah.
Right. You can strengthen the follicles that are holding your hair in. Right. So he starts with these heavy combs and he starts pulling cars around with his hair.
Okay.
Right. He gets these giant welts. They grow huge, but he keeps doing it. And after a while, he's pulling 2 cars. Then he's pulling 6 cars.
With his hair.
With his hair. With his hair, pulling 6 cars. Then there's one day that Leia's out walking around. She's just walking the kids. Everyone is staring up at the sky, right? So she looks up to see what's going on. she sees she sees Joesph hanging from an airplane by his hair, just flying around in circles, raising money for war bonds.
Guy's a nut.
Absolutely
I love it.
not. Absolutely not. Right? So he starts to develop all these different feats of strength that are, let's say, they're marketable.
Bizarre.
Right? Bizarre.
Yeah.
Right? He also has this very unique way of changing a tire. Right? So he runs a filling station. Instead of using a jack to change the tire, with one hand, he lifts up the car. His bare hands, he unscrews the tires, unscrews the bolts, takes the tire off, puts a new one, screws it back on, and puts it back down.
Yeah.
Legend is that one day Houdini's agent came in to the filling station with a flat tire. Joesph changed his tire like that, and the agent said, "We gotta bring you to vaudeville." Vaudeville was like Hollywood at the time.
Yeah.
We gotta bring you to vaudeville. So this is where Joseph's life takes another change. He ends up leaving Texas, once again, leaving Leia behind.
Leia.
Right?
Poor Leia. Just sitting there trying to get the tooth marks out
Right?
of her table.
And they got like 6 kids at this point also.
Six
So they got
kids.
6
Guy
kids.
just takes off. I love it.
He's now off in New York City.
Okay.
Right? Learning the ropes for vaudeville and like cementing his act.
Yeah.
Right? Travels around the country, brings Leia to New York first. He's not just leaving her there, but trains, brings Leia to New York, and travels around the country doing this strong.
Where'd they live in New York? Do you know that?
They lived on the I believe they lived on the Lower East Side at this point.
They wanted to be close to Katz's.
Right.
And Russ and Daughters, probably.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm a Yona Schimmel guy myself.
Are
You
you?
had their knishes?
No.
Yona Schimmel's knishes are the best.
Okay.
They've been open, I think, since the Lower East Side was created. So they're living down there. He's traveling around the world. He's making thousands of dollars a week, and his act has expanded. So he's taking horseshoes and bending them so that they're straight.
Okay.
Or bending them enough times that they break in half.
Yeah.
He's taking a steel bar and bending it across his nose. His neck is now so
Very
strong.
Jewish
it
trick,
worked.
by the way.
Yes. Yes. Yes, he was well endowed in that respect.
Well endowed in the nose. If you see, he's got a very good nose.
Yes.
It's a very good nose.
His tendon exercises worked, and he
Yep.
was bending steel bars across his neck.
Wow.
He kept airplanes from taking. Yeah, there we go. He kept airplanes from taking off with combs attached to his hair.
Look at this.
Yeah. I'm telling you, this stuff's real. I'm not making this stuff
I
up.
know. I believe you.
You
What's
sound
that?
like your dad a little bit. So he's got a comb
With his hair.
He's got a comb attached
with his hair.
to his hair with a chain hanging down and
Yeah.
a bar bending.
And he was
through the chain.
ripped for back then.
He was ripped.
Yeah.
But he was also 5'4" and 135 pounds.
That's a good height to be.
It is a very good height. It's a
Yeah.
very good height.
Yeah, because I
Yes.
think I'm about 5'5" and change.
Okay.
I'm being generous.
Okay.
Guy was in great shape.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he was built.
Yeah.
He was built. And you can see the stuff he's doing is just absurd. You see him bending steel bars. And what he would do is he would get these bars increasingly shorter and shorter and shorter.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's taking a bar that's really long that you get a lot of leverage
Yeah.
on. It's just tight grip and bending a 6-inch bar. He would hammer nails. That's his whole family. His whole family were strongmen.
Yeah.
He would take a nail and hammer it into a piece of wood with his bare hands.
That's great.
Anyways, he's doing that stuff, traveling around until 1931. Vaudeville dries up. So there's no longer a market for strongman acts. He ends up then transitioning into natural supplements.
Okay.
Right? And he's like a very early adopter of like living a natural life, eating natural foods. He creates a brand called Pepolax, which is all these natural supplements. He goes down to Brooklyn. He becomes a pitchman, selling on the street. He had soap that he would like lather up his beard and then eat the soap just to show that it was natural and you could, and it wouldn't harm you in any way. He's doing that. 30s come along and it becomes difficult once again to be a Jew here in America. The American Nazi Party has rises. I wouldn't say rises to power, but unfortunately rises in popularity.
Okay.
It's really, really unbelievable what they did here in the United States as a, I guess, like a satellite of Hitler's organization. There were,
Madison Square Garden.
You know, there was in Madison Square Garden. There was a giant rally. There was actually a Nazi youth summer camp out in Long Island. It was no joke. They were.
I guess the Knicks didn't go far enough into the playoffs.
That's right. That's right. You know, it was a difficult time to be a Jew here in America.
Can never imagine that, huh? Oh, wait. Okay, go. Yeah.
You know, as sad as that is, this is what they were facing back then, and I don't know if it's to the same degree now, but you certainly see echoes of it. But you know, Joesph Greenstein was not one that would take this lying down.
No.
So, you know, he in his pitch, he would do some of his strongman acts to bring people on. But he would also take a nail and slam it into a board that had a picture of a pig on it with Hitler's head, and he would smash the nail right through Hitler's head and talk about how terrible the Nazis were. So, of course, he wasn't making a lot of friends from the Germans here, the German Bund here. So they started to go after him, and they would show up at his show. They would heckle him, and then he'd go down and beat the crap out of him. So there was one time that he knocked out a bunch of Nazis. He knocked out 2 Nazis, and then, you know, it was in Brooklyn, so it was near Coney Island. So they had like the Guess Your Weight booth right next door. So he knocked them both out and then carried them over to the Guess Your Weight booth and guessed their weight before he put them on.
Yeah.
He was off by 7 pounds, but it was still quite a performance.
That's funny.
Yeah. There's a story that his son-in-law told about being in their apartment and hearing a commotion outside, looking out the back window and seeing Joesph being surrounded by 4 like big Nazi goons, and he was on his way out to help him, and his mother-in-law Leah said, no, don't go out there, he's got it. And Joesph ended up beating up all 4 of them. One of the Nazis, he broke 1 arm and 1 leg, and the other one he folded he folded him in half and put him in a trash can.
I love creative violence.
Right?
You know, it's like you're making a man origami.
Right. So the other two ran away. And then, you know, this continued. At one point, he's walking on the Upper East Side in Yorktown. It's called Yorktown, I think, Yorkville. But it was like a big German neighborhood. There were a lot of Nazi sympathizers. He's walking down the street. He sees a sign that says "No Jews or Pigs Allowed," and realizes that there's a Bund meeting going on inside. So he walks across the street to the hardware store, and he buys a baseball bat, and he buys a ladder. Right? The baseball bat's a Hank Greenberg special. Big Jewish baseball player, slugger, hit almost 58 home runs.
Yeah.
Walks back across the street, climbs up on the ladder, and smashes the sign down with the baseball bat.
Yeah.
Right? And as he smashes the sign down, a bunch of Nazis run out of the meeting. They knock him off the ladder. There's a dozen of them. He's surrounded, right? But he pops back up, and with the baseball bat, fends them all off and knocks them all out. There we go. That's the one. The Hank Greenberg special, right? So 99
bucks.
That's a deal. That's a deal, right? I wonder if that's the one. Knocks them all out, right?
Yeah.
The police show up, right? When the police show up, they arrest him. They spend the night in jail. The next day, they're in court, right? There's 6 Nazis sitting on one side, Joe sitting on the other. Joe is charged with aggravated assault, right? So the judge looks at Joe, and he looks at the Nazis, and he looks at Joe, and he says, "Where's everybody else?" Assuming that Joe had to have 5 or 6 people with him, guys. So Joe says, "There's 6 more, but they're still in the hospital."
Yeah.
The judge takes one look at him and says, "All right, acquitted."
Really?
Yeah. 12 Nazis at once.
I wonder if that baseball bat incident was the impetus for Tarantino putting the Bear Jew into Inglourious Bastards.
Man, I wonder. I love Inglourious Bastards, but there are so many true stories that I would love to see Tarantino take on about Nazi hunters in World War II.
Yeah.
Man. But yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
It could be. So, Joe spends the next 20 years, things quiet down after World War II. He wants to enlist to go and fight. He's already 48 years old. He's got a bum eye. He's got 6 children. They laugh him out of the enlistment center. Yeah. He goes enlistment center. Enlistment center, nobody's going to take him.
Yeah.
So next 20 years or so, he's doing the Pepalax thing. He is, doing little shows here and there, giving talks and the like. And in 1974, Leia dies. He's crushed, man. He's been with her for, I think, going on 80 years. Like most of his life, going on 7 years, most of his life, right? He's really broken, right? It is unfortunately really the beginning of the end. He does go on to marry again, but it's really sort of the beginning of the end for him. He does one more performance in 1976.
Wow.
Yeah. He's 83 years old.
Yeah.
83
Where was
years
that
old.
Performance?
Madison Square Garden.
Where the Nazis.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. The same
At
place.
MSG.
At MSG.
Yeah.
He's on stage. He's 83 years old. I have to show you. There's a picture of him at 83 years old. And he still looks like a madman. He's got this long white hair. He walks out in this singlet that has a big Star of David in it.
Yeah.
It's all leather. And he's doing the same thing he was doing when he's 40 years old. He's biting nails in half. He's bending bars over his nose. Unbelievable. Triple standing ovations, right? He's come all this way. He's done all these things at 83 years of age. He's still got it.
Yeah.
Walks off the stage and doesn't perform again, right? A couple years later, gets cancer. It's a slow decline and passes away. His legend is unbelievable.
They called him the Mighty Atom.
The Mighty Atom.
ATOM.
That's right.
The book is called The Mighty Atom, The Life and Times of Joesph L. Greenstein, Biography of a Superhuman, written by Ed Spielman. You still read books?
Nonstop. Oh, really only about Jews you've never heard of, though.
There's a litany of these characters.
I mean, there are Jews that you've never heard of, like the Mighty Atom, like Tibor Rubin, who is the only Holocaust survivor to win the Congressional Medal of Honor, or it's the Medal of Honor. There are the first woman ever to bicycle around the world, Annie Londonderry. And then there's Jews you heard of that you didn't know were badasses, like Dr. Ruth. Dr. Ruth was a sniper in the IDF.
Really?
Yeah, in the War of Independence. I can't think of the hairstylist, the famous hairstylist, Vidal Sassoon. Vidal Sassoon.
Everyone knows Vidal Sassoon.
He was Antifa, but like real deal Antifa.
The old Antifa.
Yeah. He
not
was
this Antifa.
Not this Antifa. He was fighting fascists.
Real fascists.
Real fascists.
Not fascists that pretend that they're not fascists.
No.
I get it. It's such an amazing world. We're going to uncover it. We're going to have more episodes of this. It's a pleasure sitting down talking to you. You know so much about this stuff, and I love that I'm along for the ride, man. So we're going to do this more often, right?
I love it.
Different
feels good to
Jew
be
every
back.
week?
Different Jew every week.
All right. Let's do that. Pleasure.
Same.
Thanks for having us here at
The Stand Studios.
Thanks for having us here at the Stand Studios. We'll be back with more Badass Jews. Badass Jews.